The world says that these cathedrals were built by peasants with horse and rope. But metal spires don't just catch fire unless someone wants them to. And what they've been hiding beneath the ashes changes everything. If you've ever stood in one of these towering structures and felt like it didn't belong to this timeline, you're right. Seriously, and once you see how deep the fire narrative goes, the burning up of all the buildings, you realize it's not just buildings they've been burning. It has been your inheritance. Yes, it goes that deep. It started with one fire, a cathedral in France, burned from the top down during a so-called restoration. It's always a restoration. No witnesses, no origin, no video, even though everyone today has a camera in their pocket. The spire, metal, not wood, but somehow it ignites like a match. Then it happens again in Copenhagen, Toronto, then in Cleveland, Gonzales County, same script, same fire, same silence. And that's when I realized this wasn't a restoration timeline that's going on. It's a demolition narrative. And once I looked at the patterns, the missing statue heads, the fake rebuild dates, the born in the shed presidents next to Romanesque temples, it all snapped. They told you these buildings were built by farmers with wagons. But we tested this story line by line, and it fails. Let's talk about the Gonzales County Courthouse. They said it was built in under 2 years in 1896 by a quarry owner with no construction record. Let that sink in. But you'd need hundreds of skilled workers, millions of bricks, 100,000 cubic feet of limestone, 30 horses. Oh, that doesn't sound like that. But guess what? They need about 300 gallons of water per day. Do you know how much that is? In the Texas heat, not a single account of where the crew live, no names, no materials list, just a line. The first courthouse burned down. The second was built in 2 years. That's not a record, that's a lie. So the same pattern shows up globally. Alexandria Palace, fire 16 days after opening. Come on. Crystal Palace, gone overnight. 100,000 people watched, but no one saw what caused it. York Cathedral, fire in 741, again in 1137, again in 1420, and again in 1984. Notre Dame, restoration project, fire. Who footage? How did it happen? Oh, the stories just don't make sense. Even better. They tell us in 395 AD, they built a basilica, then waited 360 years to add a courtyard. Make that make sense. But here's the real kicker. Every fire marks a power center being erased. Think about that. Give me an answer in the comments below as to what you think is going on. Metal spires catching on fire, old world structures with tunnels. Who built the tunnels? Tunnels are harder than building the castles. Hidden bells, catacombs, heads of statues deliberately removed. How is it that earthquakes don't knock off the arms or chip off? It's just the heads fall off. Because these buildings weren't built by slaves or horses. They were built by a civilization carrying divine knowledge under the reign of Jesus Christ and his saints. The system didn't just erase history. They declared war on the kingdom of heaven by burning its visible footprint on earth. Now, obviously, I can't say everything here. You know that. But for those who are done with fake timelines and Babylonian programming, I left something for you where they have not any ability to censor it yet. It's a full breakdown. What we go into is a 3-day life transformation that walks you through how to break the conditioning and reset your mind and your life and your mission. So this isn't a class, it's a rescue. And you'll know it when you see it. Let me tell you something so everyone is clear. This channel is not about exposing old buildings. This channel has one mission, and that is to expose Babylon and rescue the saints from it, because Babylon has stolen your inheritance. See, most Christians believe that they have a good foothold on prayer and redemption and life, but they remain confused why things don't quite work out for them, why prayer doesn't seem to be answered like they think, why they still get sick, why all of these things keep happening. It's because they don't realize they are being controlled by Babylon. You were born into the Babylonian system, and you don't realize that you haven't completed your full escape from Babylon. You're living in a false reality, a lie. Even the stories from the Bible have been twisted by a church manipulated by Babylon. It's very simple, but you just need to know the methodologies of how Babylon works. And then you will no longer be double-minded, you won't be double-hearted, and you'll be clear in your thinking in all ways, so that when you pray to God and you ask for things, you have a knowledge and a basis in kingdom power. Babylon has stolen your kingdom. You are an heir and joint heir with Christ. This world was created by Christ, and it's His. But instead, Babylon is running your country. Babylon controls your schools, and you were raised in Babylonian thinking. It wasn't always like this. This is recent. But the mission of this channel, through the exposure of these buildings and these systems, is to help rescue you, the saints, out of Babylon, so that you are no longer the elect being deceived by against Christ. You can check out in the link below or in the description a quick way to begin this process. So let's rewind. Why do metal spires ignite during restoration? Why do we hear about fire after fire with zero witnesses? Why do every single one of these rebuilds happen impossibly fast with no crew and no explanation? It's because these buildings were never theirs, they're ours. Or you can follow the evidence, a trail of melted bells, collapsed towers, erased buildings, and underground chambers, all pointing to a kingdom that was already here and was deliberately buried. Now we're talking physically and spiritually and historically. But here's the good news, that the kingdom was never lost. It was hidden for this generation to expose. And you were chosen to uncover it. See, we believe we're at the end of Satan's short season, and it's time for the awakening to begin. Now, the doors are now opening, and the rest is up to you. They say these churches and cathedrals were built in the 1800s with wagons and quarrymen, but the timeline doesn't add up, and neither does the math. So, if you're interested in escaping Babylon for real and want to know more,